powerful X chromosomes that distinguish women from men actually impact the female brain in a way very different from the male brain. Let's start there.
Yes, so a lot of my research has really been focused on, we say sex differences. I think perhaps gender differences is a more gentle way to put that, but there are actual sex differences in brain aging and brain health and neurology and psychiatry that have been overlooked for centuries. And as a neuroscientist, I've always been puzzled by the lack of research on this topic, because you can ask any man or any woman, like, are brains absolutely the same? And most people go, not quite. Like, I notice differences, and maybe it's just psychology, maybe it's just my own experience. But I think at the population level, we do know that there are differences between the genders. So they're not necessarily qualitative. It's not like my brain is better than yours or your brain is better than mine. They're just important in terms of biology, because biology is function, and all of us, we really want to perform our best. We want to live our best lives. We want to have the longest possible and the healthiest possible lives. And their brains are crucial for health at any age. And actually, I think we all tend to realize how important brain health is as we get a little bit older, right? When we're younger, it's all about your body and exercising and feeling a certain way or looking a certain way and also being healthy, but it's more in terms of bodily function. And I think as soon as you hit midlife, or as soon as you're past like 30, you realize that your brain is really your major asset, one of your major assets, but definitely an important part of you. And what was very unpleasant for me as a scientist is that there's a lot of bias against women, not just in society, but also in medicine. In a way, our needs are constantly overlooked, unacknowledged, unaddressed. And women's brain health in particular remains one of the most under-researched, underdiagnosed, and undertreated and underfunded fields of medicine. And this started with Darwin. Did you know that? So Darwin is the father of modern biology, and he was not exactly in favor of women's intellect. He started by saying that women's brains were inherently inferior to men's brains. Not different,
Darwin's
inferior. That's
wow.
how we start. That's how biology was born. Women were class B, and a lot of science afterwards was really focused on proving Darwin right and finding rational explanations of finding evidence that women's brains might have some issues relative to men's brains. In particular, the women's brains are smaller than men's brains, but that is because women tend to be smaller than men on average. So our heads are smaller, our brains are proportionally smaller, but the density of our brain cells is the same. And then women's brains go through transformations that just specifically do not happen to men's brains that we never talk about, like what happens to our brains with puberty, with pregnancy, with menopause. These are all the things that I So one thing that women can do is to realize that their ovaries and their brains are connected. We are systems. And I find that modern medicine is biased in that we're used to thinking about our bodies as a number of bits and parts that magically become a person, right? But their brain is in connection and is connected to the ovaries via a system. It's called the neuroendocrine system, where the ovaries talk to the brain and the brain talks back to the ovaries every single day of our lives as women. So if something changes in the ovaries, something will change in the brain as well. Only we didn't have the research to prove it. So what we have been doing is a lot of brain scans where we follow women over time. And we also, other studies have looked at pregnancy, and now we're looking at menopause. And what we have shown, actually, we just published this enormous study. It came out in a Nature journal last month. And that's probably why you saw us in the New York Times and Wall Street Journal and whatnot, because we finally mapped out the menopause transition in women. And we showed, like in a nutshell, it was an enormous paper. But what we showed is that if we're premenopausal, your brain health, your brain energy, your brain volume is up here. There's a drop as women go through perimenopause with the hot flashes and insomnia and the symptoms. But then there's a recovery, which I found really fascinating because I had never seen something good happening with aging. We're getting older, but instead of declining, the brain is actually compensating for menopause, is overcoming menopause, has the uncelebrated ability to adjust to menopause, which is also the reason that the symptoms go away for most women. And so we mapped this out, we mapped out the transition, and I think it was quite beautiful in a way to provide hope and just clarify that, yes, your brain is changing, and we want to validate that because so many women just don't know what's happening to them at that stage in their life, as in puberty and pregnancy, by the way. I don't know if you want to talk about pregnancy, but I find pregnancy wonderful from a neurological perspective. And the symptoms go away in the vast majority of cases. And this is something we should really celebrate because we spend over a third of our lives as women in a postmenopausal stage. And we're conditioned to think, menopause is something that's really bad for you, right? And that's, again, bikini medicine. You're no longer reproductive. You're not longer fertile. So there must be something bad with you. You're past your peak. And I think it's about time that we really change the way that we think about women as children-bearing machines to people who really have a lot to contribute and who are very intellectually important for society, and obviously as mothers, as sisters, as daughters, like you said, as friends.